Welcome, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast, Breast Cancer Hero's Journey. I am super excited, and I know I say this all the time about my guests, but the reason I say that is because we talk about other ways to heal yourself on your journey with cancer. Breast cancer is what we look after here, but it doesn't mean that it's the only one that we speak about. We always speak about other types of cancers. But what we do is, besides having the physical process of going through cancer, we then try and find what goes on emotionally deep within us. And a lot of people don't understand that because, we get told that, basically cancer is something of the body, and it is, but there's more to it. And this is why I can't wait to speak to these amazing women. I'm going to introduce you to Deborah Miller. She's a PhD in cell and molecular biology, trainer and expert in EFT tapping, and she's also a Reiki master, life transform coach, and an international renowned author. Now, she's recently written a book, EFT for Cancer, with co-author, who my second guest is Stephanie Marohn. Is the author of 10 books, including 7 on natural medicine. And I love that. We were just speaking about that before offline, about natural medicine. And the executive editor of a peer-reviewed scientific journal, Energy Psychology. She has a practice in animal communication and energy healing for animals, and uses EFT and other healing modules in her life. Now, having said all of that, welcome, ladies.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Now, Deborah, let's start with yourself. You basically, how did you get involved with the, EFT? And explain to those of us playing at home, what is EFT? A lot of people have sort of heard, oh yeah, this tapping technique, you just keep tapping around your body and things, not realizing there's a method to it, and it needs to be done properly. So just explain how you got involved in all of that.
Okay. It actually started by growing up on a farm. And then my parents were way ahead of their time and started up a health food store in a very small town when it wasn't the thing to do. And they kept bringing in people that were interesting, right? And so I decided I wanted to learn how to do more of that. But then my path took this very long detour, to get my bachelor's in biology and then education. And then I did my PhD in cell and molecular biology. And then I did a postdoc as well before I started coming back around to doing more of what I'm doing right now. But I think it's been a real benefit because having the science behind what I do with the emotional freedom techniques really helps me combine the two, right? Mm-hmm. So as I was doing Reiki and doing other techniques, I was taking a class online, right? And somebody introduced EFT, and I fell in love with it right away. And I started studying it and using it, and then I just went on and on and on with it. And it's still my favorite technique almost out of anything that I use, right? Mm-hmm. So what is EFT, emotional freedom techniques, or nicknamed tapping? For me, it's a technique that's really simple and practical to use, and I love that, especially with the work that I did with children. And it's a technique where you're using the tips of your fingers to touch on the ends of acupressure points, right? And so particularly working with children, they get enough needles. They don't need any more needles. So you can just doing light tappings on these meridian endpoints, right? And as you're doing that, you're focusing in on the thoughts and the feelings that are up at the moment, right? And it has a relaxation effect on the body. The science that has been done, the research that's been done, is showing that it helps lower the stress hormones. So that's just a benefit, period. If you've done nothing else but lower your stress hormones, you've given your body a sense of relief and a chance to recover and move into the regenerative process, right? Then the extra bonus is you get to release stress and anger and fear, and you can release traumas and all sorts of other things along with it. And you can do it in a very gentle way. And this is one of the reasons I really like EFT.
Yeah, so I just want to ask as well, Deborah. So when I think of EFT, one of my mentors, Tony Robbins, tends to bring someone on one of his events. I think it's Date with Destiny. And this gentleman talks about tapping, and he gets us to do sort of a quick tapping technique. So when I say I've heard of tapping, I'll be honest with you, I've only heard of tapping recently. So in the last probably couple of years. So how long has tapping been out there?
Stephanie, what was the original date? 80 what?
No, it would be the late 70s.
Late 70s.
So that was a man named Gary Craig was the one who came up with it. And then it really came out of something called thought field therapy, which was developed by Roger Callahan. And EFT is a simpler version of thought field therapy. They in thought field therapy, they use what's called algorithms, and it was kind of complicated. And EFT makes it very simple. And it's important that these are actual acupuncture points, as Deborah said, but tapping through on the 8 or 9 points takes very little time. You can get through the routine of those points in a very quick time. And this is one of the major points right here, tapping on the side of the hand. And just doing that when you're feeling anxiety can really help. It can alleviate the anxiety, because that right there does something to the stress reaction in the body. Because just very simply, if you're sitting there tapping, there can't be a tiger about to attack you. So your body knows you don't need to go into the stress reaction if you're sitting there tapping. So that just simply, that alone can halt that stress response. Very important.
Yeah, I quite like the way you said that, because, we speak about, in this case, and we'll go into it a little bit further as well as we speak, but, people who are just being diagnosed with cancer, myself, hearing those words, you have cancer, just puts you into a complete different, world. You don't necessarily have to have a life-threatening cancer, but just hearing the words, you think automatically, I'm going to die. So, and when I say life-threatening, of course, it can eventually be if you don't do the right things. But in the sense, you haven't been told, like, by the way, you've only got 24 hours, things like that. But it puts you in that state straight away. So, now yourself, Stephanie, you say that you're into, like myself, I always say disclaimer, I healed myself with natural medicine, holistic medicine. But again, I did that because I wanted to. It's nothing to do with Western medicine. I still had my doctor, my surgeon beside me 24/7, running tests, running scans, things like that. But I did heal naturally. So just speak about how your journey also commenced, Stephanie, and how, with natural medicine and then into the EFT.
Yes, I was thinking about it earlier, trying to remember if I got sick first or discovered natural medicine first. I think it was natural medicine. I began to work for a publisher. It was called Future Medicine Publishing, and it was a landmark publisher because they were one of the first to do a lot of the natural medicine work in their publishing. But I got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and I had a very dreadful summer where I thought I had it, and they couldn't find any plaque, for instance, is one of the ways that you diagnose that. So they gave me 3 MRIs and did not find anything. So that was great news for me because it was a reprieve, but at the same time, I still had that black cloud over my head because my neurologist said, no, he stood by his opinion that that's what I had. So I really began going heavily into acupuncture at that point. And I would say that my acupuncturist healed me because there were 2 major symptoms or 3 major symptoms. One was numbness around the waist. That's a classic symptom. Then another one was when I lowered my head, I'd get this electric shock down my spine, and then complete exhaustion. So my acupuncturist explained that this is all from the kidney meridian, and would not say you do or you don't have multiple sclerosis, but just healed the kidney meridian imbalance, and I was healed. So did I have MS? I don't know, but acupuncture got me out of whatever I had. And I feel very fortunate for that experience because I have some understanding of what it's like to get a serious diagnosis. Now, they weren't telling me which kind of MS I had, but it felt life-threatening to me. The idea, I was a dancer and a writer, the idea that I would not be able to dance was horrifying to me. So it was, and also it just felt like a death sentence, that my life was going to be shorter. My life was going to be, the quality of life was not going to be what I thought it was going to be. So it gave me a lot of compassion and understanding for what it's like to get a serious health diagnosis. So I'm grateful for that misdiagnosis, if that's what it was. But that's really put me on the path of natural medicine and writing all the books that I did. A lot of them are about mental illness. And that's another area that conventional medicine falls down on a lot, because a lot of people have trouble with the meds. If meds are the solution, they have trouble with the meds. The side effects are not good. And so I wrote all these books about natural medicine treatments for so-called mental illnesses. And these are not so much self-care treatments. These are serious, deal with the underlying causes, such as a biochemical imbalance. Anyway, that also was very much part of my natural medicine journey. And then finally, I have an animal sanctuary, and I've used natural medicine with my animals a lot. And when I discovered homeopathy, which is an energy medicine, that's when I felt like, oh, we can really make big changes with that on serious conditions among the animals. So then I started going from there into all the other kinds of energy medicine. And I would have to say those are so very powerful. I've used it for my own healing from trauma, some energy medicine techniques. That talk therapy helped some, but it was really when I started doing the energy medicine work that I found a big difference in my healing.
Yeah, see the thing is, we were put on this earth, whether you believe in great spirit, in God, whoever you believe in, he wouldn't put us on this earth and not give us a body to be able, and a mind to be able to heal ourselves in some way. So, and I believe that we are our best friends, but we can become our worst enemies. And what I mean by that is what we're going to discuss now is, when people ask me, were you surprised you got cancer? Yeah. Were you surprised you got cancer? No. And when I say no, I mean it's because of my past, the traumas, the things that I didn't deal with. It was all the suppressing the emotions. It was suppressing, when we talk emotions, it doesn't necessarily be just fear. It was anger. It was resentment. It was jealousy. It was all of this nasty stuff that I didn't deal with for, 47 years, because I was diagnosed at the age of 47. So it was all of this stuff combined. And you sort of go, wow, this is serious. I need to not heal just this part. I need to heal what is going on within. So that brings me to my question, and I'll start with you, Stephanie. Like, you guys, you both ladies, you guys, sorry, my Aussie, but you ladies wrote the book, EFT for cancer. And, having said that, there's, I don't want to say that there's so many things out there, but there's so many things out there. But how did you guys come to find out? I know that there was research done and things like that, but how did you go from EFT? No, let's start with how EFT helps with trauma, because I think it doesn't matter whether you got diagnosed with cancer or not. Everyone has some sort of trauma that is, going to affect them in some time of their life. Like you said yourself, Stephanie, you thought you were diagnosed with MS, but you were dealing with a trauma. You had to go through something like a life-threatening, diagnosis. So these are traumas that people go through, and it doesn't necessarily be life-threatening. It could be things that happened in their childhood. It could be an accident they had. It could be anything. So how did you sort of think, okay, EFT is good for trauma? Let's start with that. What made you start working in that line?
Yeah, well, I work for EFT Universe, which is one of the major websites for EFT. And so there's a series of books that we've done, EFT for this, EFT for that. So EFT for PTSD, for example, that's a big one. EFT for EFT manual, which covers everything. And then EFT for highly sensitive personality, highly sensitive temperament. And there's a whole line of these books, and I've edited a lot of them and written some of them. So to me, there was a big gap, which was there was no book in our series, EFT for Cancer. So, and I know that with all the cancer journey, all the aspects that come up for people. So you have the physical aspect, you have the emotional aspect, the mental, the spiritual, all of it. And EFT can help with every single one of those areas. So in terms of clearing trauma, just tapping on the feelings that you're having when you're triggered on something. So many of us get triggered, and we know that we're triggered if we have a very strong emotional reaction to something that is otherwise, maybe other people wouldn't have a strong reaction to that, or there's no obvious reason why there should be a strong reaction to that. For something like war, war or a serious accident, obviously we're going to have a strong reaction to that. But someone says something to you, and you're sitting at a table in a restaurant, and someone says something to you, and you have this very strong reaction, you have been triggered. So when you've been triggered like that, just simply tapping on those feelings. So you start here, even though I have this, even though I'm feeling so angry right now at what that person said, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Even though I can't believe they said that, and I'm so furious, I deeply and completely love myself. You go through that 3 times, and then you go through the point, I'm so angry, I can't believe they said that, I'm so mad. So you're just tapping through all those feelings. Now, behind that is a trauma that's a little bit harder to get to, but just simply tapping on those feelings, sometimes it will come up, often it will come up, what the originating trauma was. So there's a saying that no problem in the present is actually a problem in the present. So yes, there's obvious problems like hunger and war, but with the things that most of us deal with, many of us have to deal with in our lives, the problem is not usually what's going on right there. It's something in the past. And by working with EFT, when it's in terms of trauma, it's not going to probably happen in one little quick tap through all the points. You've got to do the layers. There's usually layers to trauma. So you're tapping through everything that comes up. You just keep tapping through everything that comes up. And you probably will get to what the originating trauma was, and you can clear it. The other thing I would like to say is that when you're dealing with serious trauma, it's also a good idea to work with a practitioner, because it's a little bit hard to handle that. It can be overwhelming to handle it on your own. And to have someone there supporting you and help and guiding you and just being there to help you so that you don't feel so overwhelmed and fearful can really be beneficial. So I would really recommend, if you're dealing with heavy trauma in your life, it really is good to work with a practitioner.
Yeah, I believe so too, because the thing is, if you're not sure what you're doing, you can't do damage, but you could do it wrong and it's not getting anywhere. And then you sort of stop because you think this isn't working, because you're not doing it how it's meant to be.
I think it would be better to say, instead of doing it wrong, that it's just tapping on the points, even if you don't get all the points in the right order, is still beneficial. It's just that when you're dealing with emotions connected with trauma, it can just bring up an awful lot, and that can just feel overwhelming. So it's not so much that the technique, you're doing it wrong. It's really that you deserve some support when you're dealing with heavy trauma.
Yeah. And I agree with that too. So this is just so big and so much, and I've got all these questions and I don't know how to ask them, but also, because I keep going back to the trauma, I keep going back to that. But what research, and I'll ask you, Deborah, sorry, again, my Aussie. I'll ask you, Deborah. So what sort of research was done that when they sort of found out that, tapping or EFT does work for people, what does it release? What happens when people do that? Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to sort of get the listeners, the viewers, to understand what is it that gets released? What happens when you do it the correct way?
Well, One of the things that we first have to recognize is that when you're triggered, or when you're stressed, or when you're angry or fearful, you turn on your autonomic nervous system, your sympathetic nervous system, and it turns on the fight, flight, and freeze hormones. So adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol causes inflammation. So now you're jacked up, right? Either ready to run or bury yourself and hide somewhere, or get angry and react. So the research studies that they did, and they did controls where people weren't receiving anything or sitting and reading a magazine maybe, or there was a variety of controls depending on which research project they were doing. And then they would have people receive sessions of EFT or maybe cognitive therapy, talk therapy. And so what they were finding is that they were reducing the stress hormones. So cortisol levels dropped down. And, and so one of the things is you're lowering the stress hormones in your body. So if you're lowering the stress hormones in your body, then you're relaxing more. So people will yawn, right? They'll feel more relaxed. Their shoulders drop, etc. So these are some of the things that people may recognize as that release. And they've even found that immune markers go up. So your immune system can be improved. And what's kind of interesting is even your food cravings can drop off. So there's a lot of different markers that were taken into consideration. So just scientifically, what happens then is if you lower the stress hormones, you allow your body to go into the regenerative pathway, which produces serotonin, which produces oxytocin, which creates dopamine, right? So this is why we like chocolate. It creates serotonin, right? And we want those things that feel good, that relaxation, etc. And so by lowering all those stress hormones, you're giving your body a chance to move into its natural process of creating the regenerative hormones. Okay. So that's without even doing any of the trauma pieces, right? So then when you go in and release the trauma, now you're giving your body even more release and more relaxation from those automatic patterns, right? Because once we've learned something, it goes into our subconscious, just like driving a car. You're really attentive. And then after a while, I don't know who's driving the car when you get in there because you're mostly not paying attention, right? You're, the street lights and a few things, but really it's automatic. But that's what happens with our traumatic emotions as well. They become automatic. So you don't think about, I'm going to get angry today. You just get angry, right? You don't say, I'm going to be sad today. The sadness, they just show up because they become part of this pattern of you have the thoughts and the feelings, and then your body creates biochemistry. Now it creates a loop, right? So from the biochemistry, it goes back and creates more thoughts and more feelings and more biochemistry in the body. And then it just keeps looping and looping, looping. And now you've created a pattern in your subconscious mind that just turns on anytime something similar to what triggered you originally shows up, right? Or we add layers. This is why we call it peeling away the onion, right?
Yeah.
So it's really lovely that you can do a technique where you can know that you're reducing the stress hormones in your body. That's always a benefit, period, right?
Absolutely.
And then as you can work on your own or with someone else, a practitioner, to release the traumas that you have, right? And maybe traumas, like an accident or getting a diagnosis like cancer, or maybe something that you didn't really recognize, okay? And I'll just give you a quick example. I worked with a woman who was having panic attacks. But as we logically went through and looked at all the things that could have happened, she could not find what was causing her panic attacks. So we're just doing some tapping, and we're just kind of going through it. And what came up was a memory of her mother being attacked. So she tied in the smell and the look of a place that looked like what happened at that trauma. She wasn't aware of that. She didn't make that connection, right? So we can find all sorts of things. So working with the breast cancer patients that I worked with, working with the children with cancer, just by doing the tapping many times, like Stephanie was saying, that things can come up that you're not thinking about, but it's not really something to be afraid of. It's good that it comes up because then you can release it. You can keep doing the tapping. You can look for somebody to help you. And then you can release those layers so they're not building up anymore. They're actually reducing. And that keeps helping your body get into stasis, right? Get into homeostasis and into the healing process. So these are some of the benefits that I find with EFT tapping. It's actually beautiful.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking of, I've spoken to many people on my show, and some of the people, they're go, they're goers, and they're like, oh yeah, it happened, I just got cancer, I don't know how it happened, and they're going, and I'm thinking, oh, there's something, okay, there's something there. It's not that you're not, it's probably like you said, they're not aware of it, or they are aware of it, but it's too painful. And they think, because we've got this saying, well, when I say when we do a lot of plant medicine, we always say better out than in. But in that sense, because the more you sort of let go, the better it is for healing. But you have some people who think it's not a good thing to let go, like to bring it up. So, you know what I mean? So have you ever come across, Stephanie, anyone who's sort of bringing up something and they don't actually feel comfortable with it, that they stop and want to suppress it? And what could that do to a person?
That's a natural response to want to shut it down, because after usually often a lifetime of shutting it down, and that's a natural response of the body trying to protect you, of the mind trying to protect you. It has a good impulse, which is, no, don't go there. That's dangerous, very dangerous. But in terms of the response, I just want to say that the emotional, sorry, I just had to do something online here. The emotional response that you have to an event actually gets reduced by the tapping. So you'll no longer have that charge. So the next time you come across something that used to trigger you, you're no longer triggered by it because you've removed it from your energy field. And that's where it's important to recognize this as energy psychology. The fact that it uses acupuncture meridians makes it an energy medicine, but there's also a body of knowledge that suggests that trauma is stored in our energy field, and they call it trauma capsules. And so until you clear this out of your energy field, you're going to continue to get triggered, which is why talk therapy doesn't always work, or doesn't often work, for PTSD, for example. So because they're not getting it out of their energy field. And I have a friend who works for a center for torture survivors, and they have discovered that talk therapy actually is negative, because to keep reliving it doesn't help it. It kind of encapsulate that energy capsule, that trauma capsule. So it's really, when you're tapping and you come across that response of, this is too scary, I don't want to deal with it, you just tap on it. So you can tap on it. Even though I'm really scared at what's happening, I'm just going to continue tapping. And I don't have to go there if I don't want to. I can just keep tapping. I'm just going to keep tapping because I know it really helps. And I'm really scared, and that's okay. So you just tap on whatever is coming into your mind and whatever feelings that you're having, and eventually it will subside. Or there are techniques in EFT called the gentle techniques, which allow you to not have to go there at all if you don't want to. So you can put your trauma and visualize a box, stick the trauma in the box, shut it off, and then only approach it when you're ready to. And so it's not like ripping off the Band-Aid on a sore. It's very gentle and calming and soothing. And even though some hard things might come up, you just keep tapping, and you're going to get you're going to get yourself to that place of calm centeredness, and where you feel calm.
And it is so true, because look, I'm not going to sit here and go everything's hunky-dory for me, and I've never felt fear. I lived through fear for 2 years. I let go of that, but it got to the point where fear would have killed me before the cancer did. I knew it. So I had to let go of that. I had to, and I did a technique sort of thing to release that. But to get to that point, because like you said, I kept reliving it and wanting to suppress it, and reliving it and wanting to suppress it. And it was just a constant cycle. And, I know we're talking about people with cancer, but also survivors of cancer, or, you know, you've got the techniques, you know, in your book, it's a 14 chapter book that you have, EFT for Cancer. So I'll have the link and everything for our listeners and our viewers so they can go out and purchase it. But you talk about like the different types, as in, is there a different technique, Deborah, for when you do, when you're basically being told that you got cancer, as opposed to now you're a survivor and it's 12 months later and you've got to go for your checkups? So is it a different technique, or is it the wording, like the same technique physically, but the wording is different?
Yes, that's one of the beautiful things about EFT is the same technique. You're using the same points and the wording changes. So it depends on, is it fear? Is it fear, you know, because you've got a diagnosis, so you get to use the wording that relates to releasing the fear of diagnosis. And then the fear of recovery, there's even a story in the book of my friend Elia, who's going to be an 18-year survivor right now. This is coming up, like, I think in April.
Yes.
And I just love it, you know. And so we went through exactly that. You know, the fear of telling her family that she had cancer, then the fear of every time she would have to go to the doctor, that, you know, and looking at the fact that part of the wording became about, well, her body is where her body is. The doctors are just confirming where she is. Her diagnosis doesn't depend on what the doctor says. It's her body already is it, right? They're the confirmation piece. And that gave her a lot of relief, because then she could be in her own power about her own body and, you know, eat well, you know, do her tapping, do the exercise, do the things that she needed to do to take care of herself physically as well as emotionally. So then when she went in for a checkup, she knew they were just confirming the point that she was at, so she would know what the next steps would be. Instead of, oh my God, what's going to happen? They're going to tell me something, right? And then go back into the fear. So I've worked, you know, often with that aspect as well with the children that I worked with, you know, because the children are fearful, their parents are fearful, and learning and teaching them with different wording that they can actually become calm at any stage and know that this is where we are and we're learning, so we know what next steps to take. And that's really important.
I think it's really important too, because, you know, the thing is now they've got this new term for people that go for their checkups, and they're like, oh, you've just got scanxiety. And I thought, if you start wording things, it's going to stick into your head and you're going to get worse. So someone like me, who actually, as we speak, and the last time I was on a podcast, I got a phone call, is due for my 12 months checkup. So as soon as a phone call comes in, that's when it's like, here we go, you know. And I do go into, I'm not, as I said, I'm not going to sit here and go, oh no, it doesn't bother me. It does bother me, because you hear all these things. It's externally, like, you know, I've been cancer survivor for 2 years. It's come back. I was a cancer survivor for 5 years. It's come back. So your body automatically thinks, well, you're in breast cancer free for 3 years. Oh no, you know, now what? And things like that. So, and it is hard to sort of get through that without knowing what's out there. So this is really why I wanted to speak to you ladies, because it's important to use tools. There's so many tools that you don't need to pop in your mouth, so to speak, that you can use. But you know what I mean? But like you said, which is great, because you're not using it just on yourself, but you're help healing your family, your community, your friends, and everyone around you as well. Because when they see you in a state of relaxed, they get relaxed. If you know, and whereas if they see you in that whole, they don't know what to do either or say, and things like that. But, you know, you also speak about, you know, caretakers, because they're people who sometimes, you know, it depends. My father was recently diagnosed with amyloidosis. He passed away, unfortunately, just recently. But my sister was a caretaker and she couldn't handle that. So as a caretaker, how does that work, Stephanie? How does that help someone who is a caretaker for someone who might be, unfortunately, who's being diagnosed with a very late stage of cancer or a sickness? How do they deal with it using tapping?
Yes, this is really a good question to bring up, because so many people are taking care of people with cancer now and with other serious illnesses, and it's a very hard job. So what I would say about that is that everyone involved with someone with a serious illness, with cancer or another serious illness, can tap for themselves. And it's really important, because it doesn't serve the person you're taking care of for you to get all burnt out. So you really need to practice what I call energy hygiene, which is every day tapping to clear what's going on for you. Even though I really don't feel like doing this today, I'm going forward and I'm a really good person. And I don't feel like doing this today. This is really, really hard. And the things that I'm saying as I'm tapping is there's several points I want to make. It's very important to be specific to your own situation. In the book, we give scripts, guidelines, very specific guidelines with language for every single thing that you might be dealing with in cancer, the 13 topics that we're dealing with. But you need to tailor the language to you, because that's where EFT gets really effective. You don't have to worry about saying the right thing. Just say whatever is on your mind or whatever you're feeling. So that's one thing. And then the other thing it's very important to recognize is it doesn't work. And many therapists would say this as well. It doesn't work to sweep dirt under the carpet and expect to have a clean house. So you really need to acknowledge the so-called negative feelings, what it is that you're feeling. And it's fine, whatever you're feeling, because as a caretaker, you're going to have the whole range of feelings. You're going to be angry at the person with cancer sometimes, because it's really hard work. Yeah. And really emotionally wrenching to see someone you love, or if you're someone who has a job as a caretaker, you're being paid to be a caretaker. It's wrenching as well. It's hard. It tears at your heart to watch someone suffer. Mm. So it's really important to do the tapping to clear your own feelings and acknowledge them. It's not just about clearing. It starts with acknowledging. That's why we say, even though I'm so angry right now, or even though I'm so sad right now, or even though I'm feeling so overwhelmed right now, anything that you're feeling, to tap on that is so important, because we're taught to cover that up and, put on a happy face and especially be a good soldier, all those things, to carry on no matter what. And that doesn't really work in the human makeup. We really need to acknowledge how we're feeling and then clear it. And we can't clear it till we acknowledge it.
Yeah. Yeah. And just having said that, I just wrote it down here because it was a story of Christopher Reeves, as we know, Superman. His wife died not long after of cancer in the lungs. Now, probably a lot of people think, oh, lung cancer, that's smoking. But it wasn't, it was grief. So she was holding so much grief, and you can understand, it gives me goosebumps just thinking of the story, because you can understand her husband's in that situation for many, many years. He lived like that. So she was holding a lot of stuff. So, and it's funny because I was saying that to my sister. I kept saying to her, not about tapping as such, because I wasn't familiar with the whole thing. So I'm not going to pretend I know, but I would say to her, you need to release whatever it is, because if not, it's going to get worse. And her herself was recently diagnosed with chronic anxiety. So, and I thought, again, I'm not an expert, but I thought chronic anxiety is you holding everything in. And like you said, just if a pin drop, and it's just going to get you in that mode, that thought, that feeling straight away. So it is important, like you said, as a caretaker as well, because these listeners and our viewers aren't just people with cancer, but people who are probably going through, finding out how do I help someone else, but you got to help yourself, because if you can't I know it's a cliche, but if you don't put the mask on first, you can't assist anyone else. But I want to ask you ladies now, basically, sort of giving it to you guys, the platform. So I want, I'll start with yourself, Deborah. What do you want our viewers and listeners to really know about everything we've spoken or not spoken about today?
One, I would like them to know there's lots of hope, right? And we need to have hope. And so EFT tapping is a technique that allows you to relax, release all these stress hormones, and come to a place of peace. When you're much more peaceful and you can make, I think, wiser decisions from a peaceful place and from an anxious place, or at least more conscious, if not better, right? So you can make more conscious decisions and you feel more empowered. Now you're not disempowered by the system or disempowered by the disease or disempowered by upset family members or whoever or whatever is causing that distress. So we want to create a way that you can feel empowered. And the lovely thing about tapping is you're using your fingers. The tools are with you all the time. You can't even leave them behind. They're with you. It's just a matter of remembering to use the technique on a regular basis. So the other aspect of writing the books was because people would say, well, you're good at the words. I don't know what words to use, right? Mm-hmm. So I wrote the scripts to give people an idea, like, here's a starting place. I want you to have a place to know where you can begin on this topic about caretakers, or this topic about diagnosis, or going in for treatments, or pain, or any of those topics that we have covered in the book. But I've always written them in a way that says, now adjust them to the words that fit more for you. But it gives you a starting place, and that helps us open up and then go, okay, now I'm tapping, and now my words start to come up and my feelings start to come up. And you can use that as a way to really take this and empower yourself and empower the people that are with you, right? Because they need you as much as you do, right? Mm-hmm. And they need to be in a space where they can be calm and also empowered as they are supporting you. And I saw that particularly with the parents with cancer, or with kids with cancer, right? Because there they are, they're worried about their child and they're wanting to spend all their time on their child, but they're exhausted, and they need to get settled. And as you said, when somebody gets calm and centered, then the other one around them does. And so this is a second thing we can look at is EFT has this beautiful thing we call borrowing benefits, right? So as you and I are tapping, or as I was tapping in front of a child or a parent or a person with cancer, it's a benefit to me, it's a benefit to them, but it's also a benefit to other people that are around. And so then now we're creating a beautiful ripple effect of creating calmness and centeredness and hope and inspiration and empowerment. And so I want to give people that opportunity, right? And that hope. There really are ways to move this. You're an example. There's a way to move beyond this and use the tools that we have, and find others as well. And so, from the scientific point, I like to look at frequencies. When you move up into those higher frequencies, your body is in a better place and it gives it a better chance to heal. So we want to use all those techniques and tools to get there.
Yeah, because like you said before, I think it was yourself, Stephanie, that said, it's all energy based. Yes. We are energy. So because we're nothing. And I know a lot of people think, what do you mean we're nothing? We're nothing. If you break us down, we're nothing. We come from nothing, we go from nothing, but we still have the energy and our consciousness. So I'll ask you the same question, Stephanie. What I asked Deborah, is there something else you want our listeners and our viewers to know that we may have touched on or may not have touched on that you want to share with our viewers and listeners?
Well, first I want to say that I think it's really important that people know that I want to repeat that whatever you're feeling is fine, because to tell someone you just need to release that, it's like telling a person who's in anxiety to relax. So we are not saying just release it, tap until you release it. We're really saying the important part of acknowledge how you're feeling, have a dialogue with that part of you that feels that way, and don't push that part away. Accept that part, embrace that part, work through the issues with that part. And that's really important for healing. The other thing I want to say is, the big thing I want to say is, the cancer journey is a very difficult journey, as anyone who knows who has dealt with it, and as everyone knows who has dealt with it, but it doesn't have to be as hard as it often is made. And there are tools that are there to help you have an easier time on your journey. So I think it really behooves all of us to take advantage of these tools, as Deborah said. And then I think it's important to acknowledge that essential steps in self-care for any serious illness are stress management, freeing yourself from the energetic and physical effects of old traumas, reducing limiting beliefs and negative thinking, learning how to manage disturbing emotions and enhance positive ones. And the beauty about it is that EFT specializes in all of these. So if you just integrate EFT into your life as an energetic tool, as something that you can use all the time while you're sitting in a waiting room, waiting for talking to the doctor, you can be tapping to calm yourself. And when you calm yourself, you'll be better able to make decisions. You'll be in a more centered place to be able to respond to whatever happens, whatever is said to you. And it just, it's a great self-care technique. And I hope that all of you find your way to an easier journey with cancer if you have cancer.
Yeah, thank you for that. I really like that. I really like the way you said, especially because, again, there's people out there that, unfortunately have to go to doctors to get their diagnosis and things like that. And they are feeling that sort of emotion and everything, and they don't know what to do. And all your thoughts come flooding through. And, and like I said earlier on, we can be our best friend or we can be our worst enemy. And what I mean by that is because the mind can sometimes go, you're not going to, God forbid, someone who's diagnosed the second time, the mind's already, oh, well, yeah, you survived the first time, you ain't going to do it the second time, and all of this sort of crazy talk. But, and I just want to touch on sort of slightly, and I don't want to keep you girls, ladies, because I'm sure you guys have got more things to do. But I also like to discuss that, how to prevent to get to this point. I got cancer. So we're like, don't get there. I always say to people, don't get it. I use the last 2 years, that disappeared, that thing that disappeared just recently. And as we know, we're all in a lockdown and things like that over COVID. And I don't bring it up as in, I don't want the side of the COVID side. But what I used to say to people is use COVID as your detoxing time, because when I got diagnosed with cancer, I started to detox a lot of things. A lot of people think, oh, what, you detoxed your body. No. I detoxed everything. I got rid of anything that was not serving me any longer. So I would say to people, use this time the same way. But having said that, there would have been a lot of people, unfortunately, who went through the COVID lockdowns who were okay going in, but a lot of trauma or a lot of things sort of came up because they're on their own. So how does I guess what I'm trying to ask is, how did this work for those that went through COVID as well, so they don't get to the point where 12 months later they're diagnosed with some sort of illness or sickness or cancer, God forbid. So I guess I'll ask yourself, Stephanie, how does someone go through, that through the lockdown or through this whole pandemic, using tapping, that is?
Well, that's a really good question, because there are so many stressful things in the world right now. So I think for everything that's happening, to be using tapping. I've been tapping a lot on what's going on in Ukraine, because I'm so upset for the Ukrainian people. So I'm tapping on that. And I tap on what's being done to the planet, to the natural world. I tap on that a lot. Because I'm so upset at the pollution, at what's, the destruction of our beautiful planet, of the natural world. So, and I tap on my upset over what's being done to animals, the factory farming in the world. I tap on what's being done to children around the world, children who are hungry, children who are abused. I tap on all of that. And so I think with COVID, there's lots of stress involved in that. So whatever is going on in your household, I think it's really important to do your daily energy hygiene, which is just clear things out as they arise, and not carry the load from day to day. Because as you say, Grace, if you carry the load from day to day, you might end up with something serious. On top of that, I'd like to say, though, that I think it's really important in terms of cancer not to blame the victim. That's one of the common things that comes up for people when they get cancer. They say, oh, what did I do? What could I have done differently? I did this, 3 years ago, I caused this. I wish I hadn't done that. All these regrets. So it's really important to be kind to yourself, because I think that is one of the big messages of cancer is you must be kind to yourself. You must be kind to yourself. You must love yourself. And that goes back to what Deborah was saying about the high frequencies. Love is a very high frequency. So the more love you can feel, the better you're doing your body a favor, the more love you can feel. So I guess I would also say, in terms of the COVID antidote, is find your joy in love. So fill your heart with love and fill your heart with joy, and spread that as far and wide as possible. You can do it telepathically. You don't have to do it in person, since many of us have to shelter in place. But there's lots of ways to send love out into the world, and just giving thanks for our beautiful planet every day is one of the ways. And that putting out a prayer of protection for all the suffering people in the world. There's lots of ways to raise the frequency. And I think that's an anti-cancer mechanism, to raise the frequency. But I also want to say that about our book is that we're not saying EFT can cure cancer. It can make the journey easier. And in some cases, who knows, it might be able to prevent it. If you keep yourself energetically clean, who knows? There's no research on that. And that would be a hard thing to research. But I personally feel that keeping myself clear with energy medicine of different kinds makes my health better. And I think that probably is pretty obvious.
Yeah. And I love the way you say that, because it is about loving yourself first. One thing that I say to people is, when I came out of this, I love me so much. Like, I can stand in front of the mirror and say, Grace, I love you so much. I have your back. You're fine. You're safe. Nothing's going to happen to you. I always say that to myself. I really believe that it starts within, because what you do within then expands out. Deborah, I saw on the bottom of your email that had this, and I did highlight it. There is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path. But we also use a term that we say, pel bien del todos, for the good of all. So what I'm not Spanish, but it's something that we always use the term, because it is for the good of all. Because the moment you can do that, we're talking energy fields, frequencies here, human frequency, be on a different level, be on a higher level. And the highest level you can be on is love, is joy, is your own happiness when you see it within others. Low frequencies is always, negative thinking and fearful, and it's not that something's wrong with you. It's life. It is life. If someone says to me, I've never been negative or I've never been fearful, where have you been living for the last century? Everyone's got that a bit here and there. It's the matter of how you deal with it. What are you going to do? Live in fear or live in happiness? Live in fear or live in love. So, and I love the way you said hope and be in a peaceful place, because it is. My husband always says, every time I get a little bit fearful, he says, Grace, you need to have faith. You need to have faith. You need to have hope. And I think that's so, so important. So I'm going to ask you, ladies, is there anything else you guys, ladies, would like to share with us before we let you go? We'll start with you, Deborah. Yep.
Yeah. One of the things is, you can do tapping on with gratitude. So you can use it along with positive words, positive phrases, not just getting rid of things that you don't want to feel. And I think that's a huge benefit. We can start releasing the fears and the anxieties, get to peace, and then you can raise your energy even higher. And I think, going back to energy, when I'm in a space of love and when I'm open, I'm very expanded, right? The Heart Math group talks about our heart can, resonate out a field, at least, maybe 10 feet out, or 3-4 meters out from our body. And that creates a ripple effect. And so any one person who's bringing themselves into center and love and hope, we're creating this beautiful ripple effect around the world. And then I would like people to know that, they don't have to do this alone. So, you can contact me, or you can contact other practitioners to work on these energies and these emotions and these traumas that you want to release, because it's an intense thing, but it can also be such an amazing opportunity. And I've seen this with the children, and even with my friend who's going to be an 18-year survivor at this point, is that there were great opportunities to heal issues in the family, right?
Yes.
Issues within themselves. And so when we look at something go bad and wrong, it's like there's an opportunity too. So what is the opportunity? I need to clear, I need to eat differently, I need to sleep better, I need to release my emotional issues that I've been carrying for a long time or for a short time. And then how do I interact with others? And so EFT is a fabulous tool to help you along the way. And so that we are creating more love in ourselves, so that we're radiating more love out into the world, because that's really what we're needing at this point.
Absolutely, I agree. And like I said to you earlier on, that we need leaders in this world. And what I meant by that is people like us to raise that energy for the rest of the people and be of service for others. So, Stephanie, was there anything else you wanted to share with us before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say to everyone, be kind to yourself starting right now if you're not already, and accept wherever you're at. And don't put judgments on yourself about you're not filled with love at this moment. I really urge everyone not to worry about that, to just really look at where am I right now and what can I do to feel better? And it'll happen naturally. And EFT is a great tool to help you do that. So I wish you, all the listeners, all the very best. And I hope for those of you who are dealing with cancer that your journey can be easier.
Thank you so much. And Stephanie, where can people find you if they want to follow you or, sort of reach out? Where can people find you?
Yeah, go to my website. It's stephaniemarohn.com. It's Stephaniemarohn.com. And I would love to hear from you.
Beautiful. And yourself, Deborah, where can people
my books
reach out?
Also, my books can be found anywhere.
Yes, I'll put the link of your books too, or your name, so then people can go to Amazon and things like that and purchase your books. That'd be awesome as well. And definitely EFT for cancer. I'll definitely make sure that link is up as well. And Deborah, where can people find yourself?
People can find me at deborahmiller.org. And so it's DEBORAH Miller, MILLER.org. And yes, you can look for EFT for cancer. And I wrote a book called The Dragon with Flames of Love, based on the work that I did with children with cancer.
That is so good. My neighbor next door is actually an oncologist. So she works with children at the Royal Children's Hospital. So, you know what I mean? I'm sure she's got stories of parents, like you said, who are fearful, the children are fearful, no one's really understanding, even though the doctors are being professional like they have to be. They're human, but they can't always show that emotional side, only to make sure that, God forbid, if it's not a good diagnosis, they're not going to go, oh no, things like that. But she always says to me that children are more resilient. It's the parents that she has to work with. So I think this is a great method, and I think I'll share this as well with her. and let her know, especially for children, if it's something that she can actually forward on to the parents as well, because you know, she's very open-minded about this as well, because like we're saying, it's not just the physical journey, it's the emotional, the psychological, the spiritual journey as well. So why not start from healing from the inside out? So having said that, ladies, I've really appreciated your time. I'm going to put all the links up and everything so people can see it and can start using the tools and the resources that you have to share and look you both up on your websites. And I thank you again. So thank you, ladies. And it was a pleasure to meet you. Thank you. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. And like always, I wish you so much love and light.